All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second of our series of the Active Aging virtual series for National Nutrition Month. My name is Carolyn Everidge, and I'm the Health and Human Sciences Educator for Purdue Extension in Huntington County. And today we're going to be talking about food and mood. This presentation is being recorded. However, all videos are not included in that recording. So if you do have any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to use the chat box feature and we'll address the questions at the end after we stop with the recording. So how many of you have ever felt hangry or felt pretty tired or fatigued when you didn't have a good meal, or maybe you ate too much that day and you just didn't feel super great mentally? Our food and mood can impact each other in a lot of different ways, and understanding how they interact can really help us to make these good diet choices, can help us avoid emotional eating, and even avoiding some of the impulsive eating that we sometimes experience. Something that's interesting to me is the fact that food and mood are just one letter apart. They really do go hand in hand, and it's this really delicate relationship that can spin out of control if we're not careful. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but I want to start with discussing our eating patterns. It's well known that an unhealthy eating pattern can cause mood swings. There's a lot of research on this, and even some scientific evidence that shows that blood sugar fluctuations and nutritional imbalances are usually to blame when our mood is impacted by the food that we're eating. So if we're going without this steady source of fuel, whether that's from the food that we eat or the other nutritional components that we receive, our mind and our body just do not function as well. And sometimes that can be because we're skipping meals. If we miss a meal, especially breakfast, we can experience low blood sugar throughout the day. Typically, we hear this statement that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it is a very important aspect. And so when we skip breakfast, it can lead to low blood sugar throughout the day, can even leave us feeling weak and tired. Sometimes we have this tendency to cut out food groups. So if we reduce the variety of food, so I'm not necessarily talking about being on a vegetarian or a vegan diet, or a keto diet or a gluten-free diet. I'm strictly speaking about not having a lot of variety in our food. So this can look like not getting the correct nutrients and vitamins from fruits and vegetables, or other essential nutrients we need. So specifically, some things that we need to be aware of when we think about how our eating patterns impact our mood are: do we have the correct level of zinc? Do we have the correct amount of iron and B vitamins? Magnesium, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids are really associated with having worsening moods and decreased energy when we don't have enough of those components. Another thing that is related to how our eating patterns impact our mood is when we eat too many carbohydrates. So this is typically defined as high intake of unhealthy processed carbohydrates. This would include white breads or pastries and cakes, things like that, which can cause our blood sugars to rise and fall rapidly, kind of contributing to that fatigue that we would feel. Even low energy and irritability can be associated with this as well. So I want to talk a little bit about this roller coaster ride that we experience with our eating. So even if we maintain a relatively healthy diet, it's perfectly normal to desire this high calorie, unhealthy treat when we're stressed or when we are experiencing some emotional pain. It makes sense, right? Our bodies really want to fuel up for our fight or flight mode when times get tough. So sometimes, though, our brain can get a little confused and mistake the stress of traffic for that of fighting off a tiger in the jungle. So when we think genetically, when we think about how our brain has evolved and developed, we can understand from a scientific standpoint that we needed fast energy in the past to help us do things like fight off tigers. But we don't need that same kind of energy and experience when we're struggling with traffic or having the stress of a deadline at work. High calorie foods can seem like the perfect cure for a stressful day. There's a reason it's called comfort food. And so that first craving is really kind of what gets us started on this roller coaster. So sometimes people talk about having a cheat meal. I don't really like that language. It makes it sound like a negative thing to enjoy a treat every now and then. But sometimes people go on this habit of having a cheat meal, and then it turns into this vicious cycle that we use to use food to battle off our emotions. So whether that is, you had a hard day, so you're going to get ice cream after work, or you had a difficult friend interaction, and so now you're going to eat a brownie, or whatever that looks like. When we use food to comfort our emotions, we're going to lose that battle every time. Research shows us that foods full of fat and sugar actually only increase our likelihood of depression and anxiety, which therefore means that we're going to want more and more junk food or sugary food or comfort food every time we're in a bad mood, and it just keeps this cycle going, right? So then we kind of approach this point of a downward spiral. And unfortunately, our bodies are really, really good at adapting. And if we give our bodies really high amounts of fats and sugar regularly, our body starts to think that that's normal, that's the expectation, and that's what we should want all the time. And then we begin to eat in a nutritious way. Maybe we decide we're going to start to eat more fruits and vegetables, or we're going to try to cut some processed carbohydrates from our diets. And our minds get really confused, and we can actually experience increased anxiety and depression when we first start to change our eating patterns, and we first start to look at those more nutritious options, which kind of traps us in this cycle of like, well, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm going to stop eating this new healthy, nutritious diet that I'm on and go back to what I was doing, because at least then I didn't feel bad emotionally. So we want to try to find ways to break that cycle. There is good news. You're not trapped on this roller coaster ride forever. You're not stuck in this situation where if you eat unhealthy comfort food, you're going to feel emotionally bad. If you don't eat unhealthy comfort food, you're going to feel emotionally bad. There are other ways to get out of that. So if we start to eat these healthier food items, again, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, protein items, it's going to help us boost our mood eventually. We just kind of have to get over that hump a little bit, get past that uncomfortable feeling of, my brain doesn't understand what's happening and my body is really craving these other things. But once we get past that, our body's going to really like and appreciate the healthy and nutritious foods that we're putting into our body and want more of it. And it's going to start to gradually boost our mood. There was a study that found that the amount of happiness that came from eating 8 portions of fruits and vegetables a day was equal to the joy experienced by an unemployed person finding a job. And I think that's outstanding, that something as simple as eating some more fruits and vegetables in our everyday lives can just help increase our happiness and our joy. And it's not hard to do, except for, making that effort to do so. It doesn't cost a lot of money. There's not a lot of work that's involved. It's just making that decision to do so. And what's really awesome is that the more happiness and the more joy that you experience, the more likely it is you're going to crave those healthy foods. So if you are experiencing a lot of happiness and a lot of joy, you're probably going to want to go for that fruit or go for that vegetable for a snack, rather than reaching for that ice cream, reaching for a less healthy and nutritious option. So I'd like to bring in a lot of different research and a lot of different studies, and I'm going to share that information with you at the end of this PowerPoint. But there was a different study that showed participants who were watching a happy movie were more likely to choose grapes as their snack. But when people were watching a sad movie, they reached for the popcorn because they needed that comfort. We needed to find a way to comfort the emotions we were feeling. But when our emotions are already happy, or our emotions are already in a good place, we reach for things that are healthy for us to help keep us in that standpoint. So like I said, it's a lot easier to stay healthy when you stay happy, and they go hand in hand. So we'll have to pick one and move forward. And like I said, don't forget that eating healthier helps you stay happier, and vice versa. So you might be thinking, wow, this sounds like a really good deal. And I'm so glad that I came to this presentation, because it just sounds wonderful that I can make this small change in my diet to get to this point where I'm going to increase or improve my mood. But it actually gets even better. So there are long-term mental health effects to eating well. So research shows us that healthy choices, such as the Mediterranean diet, which includes lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and lean protein, can help keep depression at bay, stabilize mood, and keep you out of the danger zone where it feels like only a cupcake will save the day. So while we're going to experience short-term and immediate benefits from to improving our mood through increasing the healthy amounts of food that we eat, it's going to even be a long-term impact that we're going to experience as well. And I think that's so exciting that we can, again, do something that's relatively simple that's going to have these long-term impacts. So you might be wondering what specifically I should eat to try to boost your mood. So here are just a couple of examples. Fruits and vegetables, you know, there's this saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, maybe the psychiatrist as well. As noted, these fruits and vegetables have been linked to higher levels of happiness. So if we can increase that intake, even if you don't like salad, don't eat salad. Find a different fruit or vegetable. Find what's going to make you feel good about you and feel good about the food that you're eating. The second thing you kind of want to consider is an omega-3 fatty acid. This is the really good fat that our body needs. It's typically found in foods like fish and nut oils or nuts in general. Low omega fatty 3 acids have been correlated to having depression and experiencing some impulsive behavior. So if we get more of this, it's going to kind of decrease the amount of depression we might be experiencing, and again, increase some of our happiness as well. And the favorite thing on my slide is chocolates. So it is absolutely okay to have a special treat every now and then. It has been found to improve mood and even reduce some tension. However, as with everything, moderation is the key to everything. So we want to make sure we're choosing real chocolate. Typically, dark chocolate is the best option. And we want to be doing this in moderation, not eating chocolate every day in large quantities of it. So what are you waiting for? I know when I was putting together this presentation, I kept reading all this great information, and I thought, wow, these are some really possible things that I could change throughout my day and within my diet. But I want to give you a couple takeaways of things that you can actually try just right now. You don't have to change your whole diet. You don't have to stop eating all these unhealthy or unnutritious foods. There are small things you can do each day. So I'm just going to give you a couple tips to try. So the first one is eating at set intervals throughout the day. So the standard that we have in the United States is typically we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But lots of research has shown us that that's not always the best option. Sometimes we need it a little more often than that, or we need smaller meals, or we need different setups to work within our schedules. So try to eat at set intervals throughout the day. So if you're going to eat 6 times a day, try to have the same amount of time between each of those 6 times to really help your body get in this rhythm and this routine of when it can expect food, so that it doesn't become hungry and start burning the things that you don't want your body to burn. We talked a little bit about processed carbohydrates, but I also want to mention having the opportunity to choose fewer refined sugars and eating more whole grains. So whole grains are going to help us feel fuller longer, and we're not going to feel that need to snack on the dessert or the popcorn or the unhealthy comfort food throughout the day, which again goes back into that having set intervals. This next one is to include protein in every meal. So when I say that, I typically get a response, well, I don't like to eat that much meat, or I don't eat meat at all. Protein is not only meat, it's nuts, it's avocados. There's lots of different ways you can get these protein items in other than just eating meat. So don't let that deter you. Try to get at least some protein in every meal. Make your snacks have protein in them as well. I mentioned already the importance of eating a variety of foods. So we want to try to get all the colors of the rainbow in our meals and in our snacks, and we want to have a variety of the 5 food groups. So try to get a variety in your meals. We've talked a lot about omega-3s, so I'm going to go on to the next one. We didn't talk too much about how our weight impacts our mood, but it's really important to reach and maintain a healthy weight. And if that is just being physically active, that's great. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's a gold standard for what your weight should be, but we want you to feel healthy and happy. And sometimes that includes increasing your physical activity just a little bit. We previously had a presentation, not this series, but in the last one, about drinking plenty of fluid and staying hydrated. So again, that's such an important concept and aspect for our mental health as well. If we're thirsty, if we're hungry, our body's not going to be operating at 100%. I talked about getting that physical activity and getting that regular exercise. And I'm just going to end on this managing caffeine intake. So caffeine as a structure is a stimulant, which means it's going to give you this really quick burst of energy. But it may make you feel anxious, it may make you feel depressed, it may interrupt your sleep if you're drinking caffeine late in the evening, and it can actually contribute to withdrawal symptoms if you decide to stop drinking caffeine suddenly. So all of these things can contribute to our mental health and also be harmful to our mental health. So we want to try to take that into consideration, and if we can avoid the caffeine as much as we can, that would be great. So that is all I have for this presentation for you today. You will receive a copy of these slides, but I do want to thank you so much for participating today. There is a survey that we're going to put in the chat box. You will also receive this in the email with the slides and the recording of today's program. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now and see if anyone has any questions or comments. I see there's been some activity in the chat box, so we'll take some time to chat about the things in there as well.